Everyone, welcome to the new media show. My name is Todd Cochrane. Of course, I want to introduce and welcome back my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Todd. It's another Sunday.
It is.
Back doing the new media show again. I think we're slowly transitioning to being a show that's on Saturdays or Sundays.
Well, I know that it was interesting to wake up yesterday morning at 6:15 in a mild panic because I said, and then I was like, oh, I don't have to get out of bed.
That's right. That's right. It's I know it totally turns into this habit. It's built into our schedules, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the key to marathon podcasting, like I keep talking about on a lot of shows that I'm doing these days. Um, just about how this is a marathon run. It's not a sprint.
Yes. And this is a marathon that for me at least usually starts at 5 a.m. I'm looking forward for your clocks to change here in the fall because then I don't have to get up to 6 because we start at 7 then. But anyway, so everyone, welcome to the show, and it's I'll be honest, Rob, we've been busy. I mean, just extraordinarily busy. July
Yeah.
was I don't know about you guys. I don't know what you can say, but we had a big month in July. And July's normally not a like a peak business month for podcasting, but it just was a pretty good month. Things are not slowing down at all.
Yeah, I would say things have been growing pretty rapidly on the content side. That's mainly what you're talking about. Is just a lot of people launching shows and getting out there and wanting to build their own little networks. I know there was an article that came out in Pod to Pod, and we can talk about that a little bit later about how magazines can start building podcast networks. And so I think that there's a lot of areas that have um, kind of been tapped, but maybe not tapped to the full potential. So yeah, I would agree. This is an explosive content phase for the industry.
So with that being said, it's like I think I said this a couple of shows ago, we're seeing a major explosion internationally. At least our business is,
Yeah.
and
Yep. Yeah.
so Mike's been dealing with, we're starting to keep track now of all the places people call in from support. It's pretty impressive. We never heard from folks in some countries that we're hearing from now too.
Yeah. No, it's been, I would say on the Spreaker side, it's probably 45% of our business is coming outside of the US now.
Yeah.
So I, and that number is increasing. So I would agree with you. The
So
world is catching on, Todd.
yes, they are, and good thing. It's good all around. So no complaints. But yeah, it was busy. We'll see how August goes. But and it seems like a lot of the news, and this is something that I've kind of honed in on because I was looking at all the normal sites that we go to get stories for the show and stuff, and it's just about, like you said, content networks, lots of people hiring, just again, it seems like every day there's something that's being announced on some sort of content site. So I will say this for the average podcaster though that doesn't have an NPR or have a Gimlet Media or a Wondery or someone like that to push their shows. I've always understood the value in building a network. You and I were part of one of the first networks that was in podcasting. We built the Tech Podcast Network, and
Hmm.
you came in pretty early on that. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't think you were one of the original 13, but still, we found a lot of value in those early days of
Hmm.
cross promoting and all that stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, I came in I think towards the after you had formed your initial group and and joined and I know you were trying to do some advertising back then,
Yeah,
even way back then.
yeah, and actually
So
we were doing more advertising than we're doing now. So that's the weird thing about it. But as far as
Mhm.
the tech side goes. The
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
really, it's just I think because we've done it so long, and everyone that is been continues to do their shows, it has been second nature to us. I still promote the network on my show, and hopefully people go over there and find like-minded tech shows. So, but
Mhm.
it's hard doing a network. It's hard work. And for anyone that's thinking about starting one, let me give you a piece of advice. There can be only one boss.
Yeah, that's true. So are you gonna go back to CES this year, or are you
Yeah,
starting to think about that again?
yeah. We're this year we're gonna do a little different deal. I've already been talking to the. Let me put this keyboard down. I got my Mac keyboard in my lap here. We're going to go this year as a singular focus on startups. So we're going to actually get a broadcast area in the sands, and we hope it's going to be in there one of the broadcast towers. It's just from a security and cost standpoint, it's much cheaper. It's like $10,000 cheaper for me to do it that way, and we're going to focus solely on the startup space. So there's 800, 900 companies there that are all just like some of them are there, have maxed out their credit cards to be there, and people are launching. And so we're going to be strictly covering the startups this year. And we will do some live. We're not going to do 10 hours of live. I'm never doing that again. Um, but 10 hours live every day for 4 days.
Yeah,
Uh, oh my,
that's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. You need a 10-day vacation after that. The and you don't want to talk for 2 weeks. The We'll probably do for maybe 5 hours a day. Break it up so we can have some lunch and have a morning segment, have an afternoon segment, and then have guests come to our little broadcast area. And plus, we've got some new tech. We've got these wireless. It basically works on part of the spectrum that's been licensed now to allow us to do live video. So I can have a camera like as much as a quarter mile away and wirelessly send it back to the studio. So we're going to be able to do man on the street interviews where we'll be able to patch in, an interview where we're doing someone right there in front of them. So I'm excited about being able to do that. So yeah, and that technology is still expensive, around $5,000, but you don't have to rent it. You can buy it and it's yours. You don't
Mhm.
take any special
Mhm.
equipment. So, um, well, it does take a special equipment, but it's a one-time purchase, and you've got it forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that sounds like a great way to do it.
Yep. So, but we
So
can't
I'm
catch.
expecting.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm expecting CES to be as bigger than ever. I
Yeah,
don't know what you think.
yeah. It's not getting any smaller. So we just can't
Yeah.
cover it all anymore. I would need 4 teams the size of our normal team to do it. We were there at the peak with 23, 24 people and still couldn't get it all. So it's whew, you can only do what you can do at this point.
Yeah.
And I look back at, having covered that show for 10 plus years now and having done 3,000 interviews over those 10 years amongst the entire group. That's a lot of face to face, and it all kind of becomes a blur. So, last year's focus was more quality than quantity. We'll probably have a mix this year of, because you're never going to know when it comes to startups if this stuff is going to make sense or not, or resonate with consumers, and if they're going to be successful.
Yeah.
But
No, that's true.
but for those of you that haven't been hung out on this show very much, this is for those of you that wonder why we're talking about this. And we've talked about this before. This is a content strategy that I've used to help build audience share. So, I do my typical tech show twice a week, and then I go to these events like NAB and New Media Show, and now more than often going to NAB, I'm actually I'm being a guest on different programs, but for for CES, we basically go and get supplementary content that we put in a different channel, and I call it the special media feed that we have. It's all CES videos or anything that we do special throughout the year, and it doesn't feed into my regular podcast feed. That stays pure, but we give the audience this opportunity to listen or to watch and go through this content. And we have a whole strategy on SEO and working with the people that we've interviewed, and basically to build momentum towards those videos. And average, we've done you know at the low end 30 million, at the high end 65, 66 million views on anywhere between 150 and 300 interviews at any given CES. And what we do in those is we make sure we say, hey, this is who I am, what show I am. We promote the podcast within the video, and then we have trickle over into the actual um, regular podcast to build audience. So, and
Hmm.
it's something that it's a gift that keeps on giving. And even though I go and spend quite a bit of money to do that event, it pays off on the back end by new listeners, new contacts, all that stuff.
So do you cross promote in both channels, each other's channel?
hmm
Okay. Okay.
And it's all on the same website. So
Yeah.
it's I'm not having to send people off to YouTube or something. And we produce and we put the videos up as YouTube, but they're on geeknewscentral.com, so they're actually on that, on my brand. And every person that's there, like if Daniel J. Lewis has come with us for years before, and he'll promote his show, and then all the different hosts that come in, because it's not just me. It's you know we've got we've had as many as 10 different podcasters in their crews, F5 Live, and they come with 5 people themselves to cover the show. And they're all promoting their shows, but we're all kind of working collectively and sharing resources to get the job done. So it's it's really collaborative, and it's really kind of it's folks that come from tech podcasts primarily.
So do you think, Todd, that there's other shows that could tap into this type of strategy
Yeah,
for other other topic areas?
all these folks that do podcasting shows, they better be hot and heavy doing interviews at Podcast Movement or FinCon or going to this event, this Pod Summit in Seattle. They better be there. If they do a show about podcasting, about new media, and here I am talking,
Hmm.
this is what we do, they better be there doing interviews for their show, or lining up interviews. And for us, the vendor's there. Get it while it's hot. If you can get the CEO of the company to step up, they're very rarely available. But when you're there with a press badge and they see it's a press, well, they have more of a tendency at that point to step up to the camera. But we do video at those events. Not every podcaster is going to want to do video, but with DSLRs doing great video these days, it's if you've got a Nikon or a Canon, and or even one of these new Sony cameras that do video, they do incredible video. You just need to be able to wirelessly get them hooked up, and it is a little bit of investment, but all this extra content, and one feeds off the other. So if you have if there is a trade show, how many trade shows are there a year, Rob? Hundreds, right?
Oh yeah.
Across the country. So
There's
there,
trade shows on concrete. There's trade shows on
yeah.
all sorts of topic areas, right?
So whatever your podcast topic area is, you need to figure out which trade show is associated. Maybe you go to it already. And if you do, then do you want to go as an attendee or do you want to go as press? It's not a good idea to have an attendee badge and doing interviews, though. They kind of frown upon that. So make sure you apply for press credentials.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the last time I was down in Las Vegas, I heard that the largest conference or convention that's in Las Vegas is a concrete show.
As far as
It's a
attendance
show
goes,
about,
well,
yeah,
yeah. Well,
and
they come to Vegas more. They come to Vegas not only for concrete, Rob.
no,
It's
I'm sure it's about
yeah,
all of the equipment and all of
evening
the
events and
techniques
yeah.
and yeah, totally. Yeah.
I don't think it's about techniques. I think it's about coming, seeing the gear, hanging out with buds, drinking beer, and going to the strip bars.
Yeah, right. That's true.
And again,
I believe
CES
that's
has a
true.
certain amount of that too. You know,
Yes.
we live
Yes.
in a politically correct world now, so maybe not so much of the latter, but you know,
Yeah.
definitely, if I get dozens and dozens and dozens of dinner interviews, and so now I can be real picky on which dinners or evening events. I could literally go all day, put this camera gear in the car, drive to an event, and bounce every hour to a different event, and sometimes in the same hotel. And it's food, poo-poos, cocktails, and socializing. But I'm 53, and by the time I've been on the floor for 10 hours already, all I want to do is go back to the room and face plant and not party. So, um,
Yeah.
so you really, if you're going to do an event, you got to figure out how to do both and not collapse and not have a heart attack over the deal. So, when I was 10 years younger, we went all night. We didn't get back to the room until midnight, 1 o'clock, and then had to be up at 5 a.m. So
Yeah.
I just can't do it no more. But if you've got that kind of stamina and you're young enough to do it, it's fun. But and there's lots of opportunities, to network and meet people, and you get yourself established too. It's all about you have to put in the time. You can't go there year one and expect to get. It's cumulative. Year after year, year one, year two, maybe by year three, you're all of a sudden you've got 5 dinner invitations.
Hey Todd, do you think it's worth it to do video now as part of your podcast? I mean, like what we do here. I mean, is it worth the investment? Is it worth the complexity to do video these days? I mean, it seems like more and more people are just doing audio these
Y-
days, but
Yeah.
just curious what you think in the big picture.
Well, I've established it with my audience. I'm 60/40, so 60% listen, 40% watch. So for me, it's worked out. But that first year, I've talked about it many times. I wondered because I started doing video, I think around episode 650. And to be honest with you, I don't know why I started it to begin. Well, I think I do. I think I remember it was basically I want to be able to talk about the process of doing video and become an authority on it. But that first year, it was very few numbers. You
Well,
know,
plus I think didn't you start getting involved in thinking about set-top boxes and
oh yeah,
you know that kind of thing, and that's what maybe was part of that.
yeah, and we had apps or channels 13, 14, and 15 on the Roku. So we were really early. There's 4,000 plus channels now on Roku. So we were very early on the Roku
Yeah.
scene. And matter of fact, I still get a fair number of people that watch the show on Roku now,
Yeah.
both on Blueberry and on Tech Podcasts. So, um, yeah, it was, that was part of it. But at the same time, too, the, YouTube was really ramping up. And, we got to remember when we started podcasting, YouTube was not very much of a thing. Or was even YouTube even around in 2000? What year did YouTube start? I can't even remember.
I think it was like in the 2007, 8 range, I think.
Yeah. So, there
So
wasn't.
yeah, so you were a couple years into podcasting before
Yeah,
YouTube
yeah,
even took off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like I said,
Yeah.
YouTube had started to kind of kick off, and there was no YouTube Live, and I used Amazon Web Services to stream the show, but I've always streamed. I've always been live, even from day one.
Mhm.
I didn't do, and I've said this many, many times, live requires you to become a better content creator. because it's harder to edit video than it is to edit audio. Of course, I've never edited anyway.
Well, you tend to create a little bit of a different show format. I think this show is a little bit of an example of that. Though I do know people that are pretty structured in their live shows,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all over the map too, Todd. I mean, it's been really amazing to me over the years to see how individual shows can be so different in how they're produced, how the audience connect with those shows. I mean, I've seen live shows, just audio can gather, thousands of people listening to them at the same time and exchanging comments, like 6 to 7 thousand comments in like an hour and a half program that's live. It's just, and then those same shows sometimes are not even podcasts. They're all they do is live. I mean, they're on demand afterwards, but it's all streaming. There's no downloading available of some of these programs, and they're still hugely popular. So it's, you know, it, there's so many different ways that you can do this stuff, and there's no one way or one simple answer to this stuff. And it's just been amazing to me over the years to see that. And being on a platform, working on a platform like Spreaker, it really exposes all that stuff of how much diversity there is and how people approach doing a live online show, whether it's live on YouTube or live on Facebook or live on Spreaker, and then they do, just have that engagement with the audience. And that's the common thread that I've seen over the years is shows that become popular online, especially live ones. They typically have really engaged audiences, and it changes the the experience of listening to those programs.
Because
Um,
oftentimes the hosts are talking to the audience, right? As
yeah,
comments
correct.
come in.
Yeah, it's more of a two-way conversation. It's not, me just talking to, just sharing my thoughts. It's the exchange that makes those programs valuable. And oftentimes the other thing that happens is that the audience connects with each other and they develop friendships. And oftentimes, if you look in the comment threads, those conversations in the comment threads are not necessarily about what's being talked about in the show. Those comment threads are those listeners talking to each other about other things,
Hmm.
not just what's going on in the program. So you're really creating a community of people, and those people either want to talk about what the show's about, or they just want to talk amongst themselves about things that have nothing to do with the program.
Right.
And you're just facilitating their connection is what you're doing. And that's kind of the other more advanced aspect that I've seen in these big communities that gather around shows is that those those connections extend beyond just the program. Um, and that's when you start really connecting at a really deep level with your audience too, because then those people associate your program with other friendships that they have, or other connections that they have in a much broader sense.
For me, when I catch myself once in a while is okay. We're doing live. We also, and that today it's Sunday. We don't have many people on, and
Yeah.
so you and I are chit chatting. But we also, and I do my show late Hawaiian Standard Time. I do my regular show at 8 p.m., which is 11 p.m. Pacific, and basically 2 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. So most people are in bed. They're not staying up to watch me. And if I get someone, it's the foreign listeners. It's either Europe or Australia.
Yeah.
And so I know my foreign listeners better than I do my stateside listeners when I'm doing live. I catch a
Yep.
few, a few people are up and catch the show, or maybe they're working the night shift or whatever, and they're watching. But um, one thing that I have to watch for as I'm doing the show is to remember that my primary audience is still right here in
Listening.
listening.
Yes.
And if you are okay, so as an example, if I have a screen up, and here in the and this is really easy a mistake for me to make is if I can, like, I'll go to the podtopod.com website right now, load that up. And,
Hmm.
if I bring this website up on the video, okay, on the live video, and I'm talking about something on this page, I have to remember to be very descriptive of what I'm what I'm looking at because the listeners will get lost. The people watching will say, "Oh yeah, we understand," and so you have to be very descriptive. And so what do we have on this page? They're showing Slack with Pod to Pod. They talk about their Slack channel. And so it's got the Slack graphic up. So those people that are listening right now to this show know that I'm looking at the Pod to Pod website and I'm looking at the Slack logo. Most people know what the Slack logo is. So, you have to describe that. If you don't, then you disenfranchise the listening audience. So you have to continue to remember that there are people that are listening that can get pissed off if you're talking about something in the video that you're not describing it to them.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's really just a matter of sharing what's important and what's pertinent to why you're showing that on the screen,
Right.
and what's relevant that's being visually seen, to what the conversation is. I think it's just keeping context, which is really important.
And if I bring up
Um,
an article that is specifically has text, and I'm just using it for filler. So if I bring in this article that is for filler, I don't have to feel the audience that's watching knows that I'm talking about a specific topic, and then but I don't have to go into. So if on my tech show I'm saying, hey folks, so I heard about this thing called about there's an appetite for podcasting now with lawyers. And over at the Mercury News, they're talking about some lawyers that are, and I would go into this article and I would discuss I'd give the Reader's Digest version of this. And even though the visual audience is looking at the image that's up, I don't have to describe that there's a picture here of three guys doing a podcast. And
yeah.
and meanwhile, I'm back on another page. This is just being used for fill. And then I'm actually on a different browser tab looking at the article details. And so I do nothing. I just use that as a place marker, So um, I think that it depends on what you have on the screen. And then I always tell my
Yeah.
audience that this is something you got to go look at. It'll be highlighted in the show notes. Then the listening audience knows to go to the show notes, and I'll
Hmm.
star an article, and they'll be able to get to it quickly to see what I was trying to describe. So that's the thing about doing video. You have to continue to remember where the majority of your audience is, because very few shows will have as many people watch as they do listen.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's certainly a factor too that you need to think about. Well, how are you going to add value to the videos? That's different
Right.
than the audio too. I
Yeah.
think it goes the other way too. What can you do in the video that will be interesting to somebody watching the video? I mean, here we are, two heads talking
Mm-hmm.
into
Yep.
big microphones, and it's not really that exciting.
No. No.
So, I mean, what can we do to spice it up? I know you have a big sign behind you that says "on air," but
Right.
that probably says that all the time,
It
right?
does. But here's
Because
the
you're always on the air, right?
yeah
Yeah.
here. But and I think the main thing is too is that if I'm doing a dialogue, um, example, I did a video recently that I put up on something I'm working an issue that's going on in my hometown. The power of video really is looking right into that camera eye and talking to
Yeah.
the camera and use the same techniques that you're using to talk to someone that's listening. You can have a deeper connection, eye to eye contact, because if you're looking directly at the camera lens and not down here looking at the keyboard or looking at the switcher, which I'm often doing,
Yeah, I
um,
do too.
you
Yeah.
know, the audience knows that, hey, he's looking at me, and it's really not that, but it's psychological. What do we do when we're standing beside one another? If I was fidgeting around while you were talking to me, and and touching a remote control, or playing with a pen, you'd get pissed off because you'd be like, he's not really listening. Whereas in podcasting, we can get away with that because we are listening, but we can also multitask. So in video, it's a different connection. The eyeballs are the connection. So
Hmm.
if
Yeah.
you have the ability not having to look at the screen very much and can talk to the you look at all the successful YouTubers that are vloggers. You look at their techniques. You look at Casey Neistat. You look at some of those guys that have got massive audiences, and they do something very, very
Hmm.
well. They use that. First of all, they're great cinematographers. They do great videos, but when they're talking to you, you're they're in your face, you know, and podcasters aren't really used to that doing their show. They're looking at their show notes or looking at whatever they've got planned on the screen. I
Hmm.
think you see this in talk radio. If you ever watch talk radio live, um, and I know people don't like this. Not political shows are huge, but if you just watch, and I tell people to do this. You may hate their politics, but you go look at um, some of the videos of some of these folks and what they're doing. You're going to learn some things. You look at what Glenn Beck's doing with his network and how their audio. They have a massive audio audience, but they also have this video part of their business. You look at what they're doing there. You look at the Hannity's, the Rush, those
Hmm.
right lean, those right conservative shows. Unfortunately, I don't have really any radio. So political seems to be big. If you just look at what they're doing, throw the politics aside. These have big production crews. You can learn a lot from what these folks are doing and how they're
Yeah.
connecting.
Yeah. I mean, even a show like a Rich Eisen show is another one that's a good example. I mean, it's Dan Patrick is another
Yeah, there you go.
really, really. I mean, I think those two guys are really, really interesting from the standpoint of how they produce their podcast at the same time that they're producing high quality video productions
Yeah.
too. I mean, they're on sets
Yep.
that are very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, it's a little bit like what Leo does. I mean,
Yeah.
Leo Laporte has created these sets
Beautiful
around him that
sets.
are very attractive
Yeah.
for for video, but most of his audience is audio.
Yeah.
So he's doing a very similar thing to Dan Patrick and Rich Eisen, who have television shows too, and they're nationally syndicated on the radio as well. Of creating very attractive backdrops and maybe using lavaliers, not so much using these big, huge microphones like we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Leo still
Um,
uses microphones, right?
yeah, he does. Yeah, they sit on desks on like a mic stand.
And they
They're
use,
not booms.
yeah, they still use
Yeah,
PR40s, I think. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
So yeah, because he's all about the audio quality. I mean, he
right,
wants.
right.
I think that the risk with the whole lavaliers thing is that your audio quality is not that great.
Yeah, it can go to the point of almost sounding being on a speakerphone if you don't get the position exactly right. It
Yeah,
gets a little big roomy. I think it's really at
be a
this.
little tinny. Yeah.
Yeah. I think too is, I've done many of us. And there was just some guy on Slack yesterday that was saying I got a baby coming. I'm getting kicked out of my studio, and it's being converted into the baby room. And I told him, my comment was, the baby will be with you in your bedroom 99.99% of the time. Don't worry, you're not losing your studio. At least that's the way it was with my kids until they got to the point where they could be in their own bed. We had babies in the bed for years. So, and I know people cringe when I say that, but we protected so that the baby wouldn't be rolled over and all that stuff. But I think that he's going to the basement, and he's got a very limited amount of room, and he's literally going to be like in a closet. But he's I was thinking, do I put up I've got the air conditioning and heater over here, and I've got kids' playroom behind me. How do I do this? And my suggestion was, dude, you need to put a fake wall in. Just box out a frame, put a, do use 2x4s, and then put insulation in between, and the drywall on either side. That'll help a lot, and it's not
Hmm.
permanent. Relatively inexpensive to build. Don't necessarily need a door. You can use a something, and you're going to want to keep it cool. But I think there's lots of ways to do it. But he's going to have a hard. This is a 10 by 12 room. People have no clue, and I'm really kind of in a cubby hole of this room. So I'm using like maybe 8 by 6 of this room for this little area, and I got shit packed in here everywhere. I've always talked about changing this backdrop, but the problem I have with changing the back, it's full of stuff, and I'm like, okay, it's also a storage closet. So in Hawaii, houses are sizes at a premium. So I'd love to have like a basement, but we don't have basements here, and so you have to use what you can use to spice up your background as best you can.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I mean, there's plenty of podcasting networks set up, and then back in the early days of podcasting, video podcasts were pretty popular.
Yeah.
I know back when I was working on Zune in Microsoft, um, the the Zune player had a big screen on it. We had a lot of consumption of video podcasts, and that seems to have faded away. Though Apple hasn't killed their video podcast area,
No.
it's still there.
But
But
I've always thought too, Rob, that this show might be cool to do green screen a little bit. But again, the configuration of this room makes green screen hard to do because of the
yeah,
monitors and everything. But then you can put up whatever
and
background you want.
and frankly, the topic of the show, I think what you're doing is appropriate. It shows the tech. It's a geeky place, and that's oftentimes what podcasters are involved in.
Yeah.
So they're
And
curious about your studio,
and I've
right?
always wondered why people watch. Because if especially when I'm doing the solo show, I can understand you and I why they come watch. But
Yeah.
if and maybe they're just running this in the background. But as far as the my tech show where I do an hour and 10 minutes of news, you know, come on, is it that in it's do you want to look at me for an hour and 10 minutes? I've always wondered that. So to be frank, but yet a huge part of my audience, not necessarily live, but afterwards, listen, watch it.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they just throw it on the Roku or if they throw it up on their computer and maybe they're working and I'm just talking in the background. Maybe it's a convenience thing. I don't care as long as they like we've always said, I don't care how they get the show as long as they get the show.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
The same with
So did you
this.
see this article that was out about talking about the investment in Gimlet Media
Yeah, they got
here
14.
recently?
Yeah, it's interesting though what they're talking about using the money for. The 14 million.
15.
15.
Yeah, yeah. I guess they had raised 7 million prior, but I guess they got a venture capitalist to give them 15 million. They're an 80-person company now, Todd.
That's incredible. 80?
Yeah, yeah.
$15 million
And they,
dollars is they're making if $15 million investment doesn't support an 80 person company, so they must be doing very well to be able to pay salaries for 80 people.
yeah. And I guess the
80.
investors valued the Gimlet company at 55 million pre-money, and I guess it's worth now after this investment 70 million.
Wow.
So and what's interesting about it is, I'm pulling this off of a Recode article that was written, about it, and the author of the article, I guess, talking to them and talking to some venture capitalists out there. It's kind of interesting what he pulled out of this. It says, um, um, when he had heard that the Gimlet Media folks had raised some money a couple minutes, here recently. I guess he went around asking some venture capitalists whether they were investing in other podcasting startups, and I guess a lot of them said nope,
Oh.
they are not. And and I guess the longer answer here in the articles, I guess many VCs had looked but found various reasons not to invest. They were concerned that there's no real tech in podcasting, or that the industry is dominated by Apple, and Apple doesn't seem terribly, um, you know, terribly engaged in podcasting, or that the podcasting space just isn't big enough to produce an exciting, quick return on their money.
I think a lot of them don't understand it, and here's the funny
Yeah,
part is there's tech. Some companies have tech.
but many of them don't. Like a Gimlet
Right.
Media, I wouldn't think would have really much any tech.
Yeah, and they're kind of
It's all it's a content company.
yeah, they're closed mouth about what they do have tech-wise too. So, it's kind of funny as we often find that our stuff is powering some of these bigger networks. We kind of laugh behind the scenes about it, but it's all good. We're happy they're able to use our tools, but um, and what really is the bottom line is, Rob, is that very few, I think Libsyn, us, you, maybe Blog Talk, um, probably are the only companies that have revenue that would be considered worthy of looking at for late stage investment. And that's what we're really talking about here. We're not talking about an early round.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
look.
This is like a B or C round.
Yeah, this would be kind of a round that someone would come in and say, okay, we're going to give you $10 million for this percentage of the company. But in order to get
Mm-hmm.
that round, you have to have X dollars of revenue already coming in.
Yeah.
So most of these late investment firms, they won't even talk to you unless you're doing at least a minimum of 1.5 million gross a year. So, that's kind of the number that they'll at least talk to you about if you're doing 1.5 million, and then they'll start thinking whether or not they want to come in with with some cash to put in a stake. But the majority
Mm-hmm.
of the podcasting, at least service companies are out there. I would assume the majority of them are not even close to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this article also talked about another podcasting network called Crooked Media. I guess it's the network that launched the Pod Save America podcasts this past year, and they're saying that it has a $5 million annual run rate, which I'm not exactly sure what. Do you happen to know what the run rate means? Is that
That's
its
advertising.
valuation
I think that's the amount of advertising they're doing. I think
or
is
sales or sales?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's probably the amount of advertising coming in. Let me see if I can get an
Mm-hmm.
actual definition of run rate.
Uh, um, yeah, I've heard that term or that phrase said before, but I guess I've never really fully understood what it meant.
Oh, here it
It's
is. The run rate concept refers to the extrapolation of financial results into the future period. For example, a company report to its investors that its sales in the latest quarter were $5 million, which translates into an annual run rate of 20 million. So that means that PodSave America is making roughly 1.2 million a quarter. But
okay.
here's the thing about that with that network. Then, if they're doing 1.2 million a quarter, that pays for a lot of employees. And that
Yeah,
and if they don't have that many employees, that makes for a very profitable business. I don't know how
yeah,
many people they've got. So let's say 1.2 million pays easily, um, probably easily, depending on what level you are in the company, of 9 or 10 people. And I think most of these companies are on the East Coast, so they have to pay a premium just because they're in New York City. So maybe not as many. you know when I went to New York, and when we were in our the first go round, when someone was wanting to acquire us in the early days of podcasting. I went to New York and visited, and even though I live in Hawaii, I basically came home and said the only way that I could probably survive in New York is I'm going to have to make 150 to 200,000 a year minimum just to be able to afford to live within striking distance of Manhattan. Um,
Hmm.
some people will gawk at that, but go to Manhattan, hang out for a week. you know, it's not cheap.
So I also see in this article too, Matt Lieber, who's one of the co-founders of Gimlet Media, and I believe Matt's been on this program before.
Sure.
He made a comment that he believes podcasting is the last frontier of digital media. It's the last 2-3 hours of people's day that's untouched by digital screens. That's what he says. And filling that void with a new form of media will be a valuable exercise. You just don't see this much time spent in a medium that's this effective for advertising. Um, so, I mean, I would tend to agree. I think as this medium starts to replace radio, I think things will be different. I don't know that. I think as you think about this medium replacing radio in a greater and greater sense over the decades into the future here, that we're going to see a direct transfer of those funds that have been funding radio over to podcasting. My gut would tell me that it's going to be some percentage less that's going to move out of radio, because I believe radio has been kind of inflated in its revenues based on kind of, I don't know what the right word to describe it is, but maybe based on kind of inflated expectations of what the medium actually, how big the medium was based on ratings versus actual listeners. Um, I don't know. What's your thought on that, Todd? I think currently the radio advertising side is currently at about, I think, between 10 and $14 billion in annual sales. Do you
Let's
think the podcasting and on demand could get that big?
let's put this way: someone, if we had an influx of $1 billion in advertising and podcasting, every podcaster in the planet would have an advertiser
Yeah, currently today, but
today.
but as you look out like 10 years,
Oh,
because it's going to take at least 10 to 15 years for all those many of those radio listeners to convert over to on demand and listen more to podcasts. I believe.
I think that advertisers are going to be desperate to. I think it's going to be a bidding war because I think you're going to have, those earballs. I like using that word. Those earballs are going to go somewhere, and podcasting seems to be the natural destination. Live streaming is going to get some of that too, of course. So, yeah, I think the future is bright. It's just getting there. We've been at this now since 2004. I thought we'd be further along. Um, we've talked about this many, many, many times on this show, so we'll see. But I think Matt's right. But podcasting for me and for a lot of, of people that I talk to is their morning. They've replaced morning drive with
Yeah.
podcasting. When I can get on my app, all right. So I take my kid to school, right? My phone has gotten so smart. When I walk to my car, I get a ding, ding. 32 minutes to get to Mauna Loa High School. It knows where I'm going. The app, just by this function of me walking out to my car at that time, my phone dings me and says 32 minutes. Do you get that on? Of course, you don't maybe have a regular drive now,
No.
but
No.
Monday through Friday, I'm taking my kid to school in the morning. That app knows how it. So I don't have to go on the radio and find out what the drive conditions are. There's no reason for me to
Yeah.
turn on FM 100.
Yeah.
I get in the car. My son is plugged into whatever he's plugged into, or if I force him not to use a device and we talk on the way to school, which I try to do a lot. Other than that, or I'm on a conference call or something. So it's just gonna it the our mobile devices are just taking away some of that information. Look at Waze. If I want to, if okay, so the traffic's like
Well, and
it's
weather too. Yeah.
yeah. If the yeah, I don't have to deal with that here. If it's sunny, it's gonna be sunny or it's gonna rain, one of the two. Um, if I get on the highway and I heard my app has said it's gonna be 52 minutes to get to the school, I'm like, oh, there's something going on with traffic. So I hit Waze, and it knows the route that I'm driving, and it tells me, okay, hey, the faster route is to get off this street. So I don't need to listen where the backups are anymore. The apps tell me. So
Hmm.
I don't need to go to radio for that. Maybe I want to go for the news, maybe local news.
Hmm.
Um, but
But you really don't even need it for that, right?
no, that's probably the only thing I need local radio for now is in the morning maybe is a little local news. But I don't want to listen for 3 hours to get all the news of the day because the talk stations here are not. They're breaking it up into three topics for a 30-minute period separated by four commercial breaks. So for me, podcasting is a morning thing.
Hmm.
Um, I,
Yeah,
I
and I do wonder how technology, just in a general sense, is going to evolve, right? And how that's going to impact podcasting. Technology is, I think we're kind of in a lull of technology innovation right now, but there's a lot of stuff in the R&D labs right now that are bubbling
I
that could be very, very transformative to all of our lives. Autonomous cars is one of them.
ultimately I think what it is, and again I've said it. This is the second time I've said it on the show. I, we started this medium when it started because there was no way, it was not easy to get this content onto a device. We're way past that. It's
Hmm.
simple. The media is on the device. Podcasting still serves the RSS feed, still serves as a mechanism to get syndication out there. But again, I don't care where people listen, as long as they listen. So why? So what do? I have my show syndicated on streaming radio. So, it's streamed on TuneIn and all these other live streaming sites. People can come in and listen to it as an actual stream, number one.
Hmm.
Number
Hmm.
two, they can get it on demand almost anywhere on any app, any place that you consume audio content. I really don't care how they get it. um, the key, though, really to me, is still the distribution piece. Until the distribution piece changes dramatically, I don't see a shift in podcasting. Now, if the distribution piece changes, we'll shift with it. Someone's still going to have to provide some, I would assume, unless they completely eliminate the need for any tools, which maybe, but I don't see it in the foreseeable near future. Um, because people are still going to need a place to put the media and all that stuff. I guess from my business point, who knows?
Hmm.
Someone could come up with something miraculous tomorrow. I'm out of business, but um, things will definitely heat up as the space grows too, because more people are going to get in and want a piece of they're going to want a piece of the cash.
Well, and as the listener side of this grows, there's going to be a lot more pressure put on monetization.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I think that's the big part too. I mean, if you think about, um, I mean, because we're currently only tapping into less than half of the U.S. population as active listeners to this medium. We could easily, if you look at radio's at 93% currently. Let's say we get to 75% of the U.S. population
Right.
listening to podcasts every week. What is that going to do to your bandwidth numbers, Todd? What's that going to do to hosting a podcast?
Well, depending on the size of your show, it's going to get big.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're going to want to. I mean, unless the cost of bandwidth continues to drop, which it probably will,
Well, and here's another thing
it's
too
going to get
is
expensive for some. Yeah.
it's for us. And what, and this is just, pure mathematics, is as the volume grows, our bill doesn't necessarily grow. And this is,
Because
it incrementally
yeah,
grows up based on number of customers I have. So the more customers I add, the bill goes up,
hmm
obviously. But the more volume, every year I go back to the CDN and we have a bidding war, and they bid for our business. It's true. We go out and
I I know they drop their per gig rate, right, based on
right.
your volume,
And
right?
but I'm going to guarantee that I'm going to, let me use a number. We're going to guarantee we're going to buy 1,000 terabytes a month. And let's just throw that number out there. I'm buying I'm guaranteed that I'm going to buy 1,000. Matter of fact, I do buy 1,000 terabytes a month, no matter if I use it or not. So,
hmm
I go to that, and you go to them with that number, and they say, well, we're going to give you, this much. This is going to be your per gig cost. And you decide whether or not that's acceptable or not, and you sign a contract. So we do that every year, and our bandwidth is going up every year. So
hmm
you got economy of scale by being able to build the bandwidth. Your bandwidth is growing, but you whack a mole a little bit more at the now at some point. When you get sub penny per gig, there's only so many ways you can cut sub penny up, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You're never going to get to free, but let's say you're at half a cent per gig. You're going to be moving some traffic to get half a cent a gig. Let me just be upfront and say that. But even if let's say you're at a penny, and that's the goal of most companies, is to get to a penny a gig. Once you get in point 0.9, point 0.8, that's still a annual savings. You go from a penny a gig to 0.009 cents a gig. You're still seeing a 10% for a whole year
hmm
savings on bandwidth. And when you're dealing with tens of thousands of terabytes, that adds up. So um, I'm not so worried about the bandwidth costs, because we'll be able to, well, podcasters will be appreciative if they're going to be able to come to somebody like you or I and get their their show hosted, and we'll be able to use, if everyone had a super successful show, I would not survive. you
Yeah,
know
it's true.
it's a law of averages.
hmm
But
Yeah.
I also know where my bread is buttered too. We know that the Gimlets of the world are doing their own thing, and they've got super big shows, and they probably have a super, well, some of them are finding out they're going to have a super big bandwidth bill. Um,
hmm
but I
Well,
want
especially if they're trying to host on their own, or they're not working with a network that's able to buy at scale.
to at scale
I think
the key,
that's 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 the mistake that some people make, is that they think that, well, I'm just going to go alone,
right? I scared
and
someone on this.
do this and get a yeah
I scared someone on this
yeah
show, and because they freaked out when they heard that I said that there was a vendor that was going to have an $8,000, or whatever the number was, like 7,000 or 8,000, whatever their monthly hosting bill was going to be. And
hmm
he said, I can't afford you. And I was like, well, just please understand that what we're talking about here is that that company um, was moving a massive amount of traffic. To have an $8,000
that's
hosting
huge.
bill, that company was moving a massive amount of bandwidth. And
Yeah, yeah.
and the only reason that they end up talking with us is because they found out, and trying to do it on their own, that their bill was really going to be $40,000 if they did it on their own, because they didn't have enough scale to get that cost per
Yeah.
gigabit down. Yeah.
And that's one of the big reasons to work with a platform like yours or ours, especially if you have a show that scales, because we're already buying huge amounts of bandwidth right now,
Right. Right.
and we can get that price down. And and the truth is that aggregating those type of shows or those type of networks into our platform, or yours or Lipson or whatever, drives our costs down further. So it helps everybody
Yes.
to get lower prices as well.
Yeah.
And that's one of the advantages of working with a bigger network, is that you can have um, that discount based on scale.
Scale.
Because if you go to a CDN
Yeah.
yourself directly and you've got 10 or 15 shows, and you're doing huge volumes with those shows, you're gonna you're gonna I hate to say it, but you're gonna not be able to work with them because it's going to be so much money.
I just tell people go
Um,
to CloudFront and look. It's public. CloudFront puts their pricing online. You can see the type of volume. Well, just let me bring up CloudFront front pricing.
yeah.
And this is Amazon's CDN. Um, so pricing for CloudFront. Okay, so the first 10 terabytes in a month for United States traffic is 8.5 cents. So you have to move eight eight and a half. You have to, and this is you have to contract. You have to guarantee that you're going to move a certain amount. So if you move up to 40 terabytes, you get 8 cents. 100 terabytes, 6 cents. This is a gig. 350 terabytes, 4 cents. So you see where we're going here. 524 terabytes, 3 cents. Now, if you want to get to the 2 cent level, 2.5 cents, you got to move 4 petabytes or 4,000 terabytes. Over five over 5,000 terabytes, you can get to 2 cents. Now that's U.S. prices, and when you have stuff that comes out of Hong Kong, the Philippines, or Japan, or South America, you have traffic originating there. Oh boy, the price goes back up because it's more expensive for data that's going into Hong Kong, Japan, South America, Australia. You'll never get down in this. They talk about 14 cents going into Australia. So, if you have a US only audience, yeah, but you got to do massive traffic to get these
but
discounts.
Todd, those numbers are, from my experience, those numbers are pretty high, um, for even that volume.
Oh, it
Um,
is.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that that's any kind of a deal by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's not. It's not.
No.
Not, but what you do is, okay, you go get a couple of quotes.
Yeah. Well, you have to do some price comparison shopping. There's lots of CDNs out there that you can work with
Yeah,
at at scale,
yeah. But
and you should be able to get a pretty good rate if you're somewhere between 500,000 gigs and one 1 billion gigs,
right.
or 1 million gigs. Yeah,
Well, let's
you should be able to
yeah.
get a much less rate than what you're talking about there.
Yeah, but it's again, you got to be able to do that volume, and the key is the volume. The volume, but still, in the end. All right, so let's really think about that. So let's even think about 1,000. Okay, 1,000 terabytes. All right, so 1,000 terabytes. What is that? 1,000,000 gigs.
Yeah,
So 1,000 terabyte is a thousand. Yeah, is 1,000,000 gigs. So you still, if you multiply 1,000,000 gigs by 2 cents, do the math. It's still not a cheap
still a big
bill.
check.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even though it's pennies, it's still. Um,
And I think we mentioned this maybe last week or the week before, but oftentimes what happens, is that once they find out, like you're you're talking about that $8,200 bill, the first thing I would ask them is, what's your audio quality? Can you cut back to 64K? You know,
Yeah.
um, because truth be told, if it's just spoken word, 64K is fine. And if you're getting hit with a bill like that, that could make a difference between paying $8,200 and paying
And 4100. Right,
$4,100.
right.
Because I mean, a lot of podcasters think putting their podcast out there at 128K is what they want to do, but at scale, that probably is a difficult thing to do. You can probably even cutting back to 96K can save you,
But
a few $1,000.
here is the rub, Rob. So you cut back. You're at 128. You cut to 64. You remove. You split the terabyte usage in half in a month. Well, guess what? You've now done. You are
You've dropped your scale. Yeah.
Yes, you have, and your price goes up. So
It gets you going both
you're
ways, don't they?
screwed one way or the other. You still may, the bill instead of being 4,100 may now be 62 because you can't get the same pricing that you would have if
Yeah.
you, yeah.
Got the 82. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right. It's absolutely the truth, you know. So
Yeah.
it's a racket.
But you know that though there's a couple of companies out there that could blow us all out of the water if
Yeah.
they started hosting
Yeah,
podcasts,
they could.
right?
Yeah, they sure could.
Like Apple, Google,
Apple will never host.
Microsoft.
They'll never host the media.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm sure those guys are paying fractions of pennies
Well, and matter
for
of
their
fact,
bandwidth.
Google bought their own fiber. So they weren't happy with a fraction of pennies, so they just went out and bought fiber. So that, they don't
Yeah.
pay bandwidth. And they pay now co-location fees where they have servers sitting in
Yeah.
ISPs and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and they had to invest in the fiber the infrastructure. They had to pay for the infrastructure.
Of
So their
course,
bandwidth is never free.
never
I mean,
free.
even though you
No.
build your own network,
Yeah.
it's all a matter of scale.
Yeah.
Um, and how much that cost is versus how much traffic you're moving.
They probably had more cost
Um,
in peering fees than they did in actual bandwidth
yeah,
fees. So that's what they were trying to eliminate was peering fees.
yeah,
So,
because I would think that Google would probably want to own a global network of fiber. I would think.
well, they've bought a bunch of fiber, so I think
Yeah,
they have.
but they may not own own enough fiber to have peering all over the world, though. That could be their long-term goal.
Yeah, trying to figure out which
Um,
camera's better. I think this one is. You're kind of washed out a little bit today, Rob. But I think this is and again, so when someone says you scared me with that number, please understand it. They had well, let's put it this way: it's the biggest proposal I ever put together for a single network. So most people are nowhere near. We've got a lot of little mini networks. It's $100 a month. So
yeah,
it's they don't use that much volume. They have a lot of shows, but they don't move a lot of traffic. So that's the other scale of things too.
you know, one thing I've been thinking about for many years is if you compare broadcast radio to podcasting, purely from a cost of distribution standpoint, right? Um, it's an interesting thing to model out, and I'm not sure that there's been a lot of talk about this. Is that radio has been under this distribution cost structure that's been very advantageous.
Oh yeah.
Um, it doesn't cost anything additional to radio to add a listener,
No,
right? Or
nothing.
add a person that gets access to the content.
Their capital
Um,
cost is fixed.
yeah. We're on the podcasting side, adding each additional listener to any program or any live stream has an incremental cost.
That's right.
And I think that's been one of the concerns that many have had with this medium as it scales and as it grows bigger. Does the economics of it make sense?
Well, I look at the video part, and the video portion is, mm, for the podcast, if I was on purely CPM rates, it would be a loss leader for the video. Because the video's 900 to a to almost a gig. So if you go back to that, that cost structure, um, if you look at, because I pay for my bandwidth for my show, um, but if you look at the, per gig cost to deliver it as a podcast, that, it could be a nickel a listener. That's what it could cost to actually deliver video, where a
Mm-hmm.
nickel would be 10 audio listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you look at pure cost, now most podcasters don't have to think about this because they get, the advantage of the flat rate plans that we've offered
Mm-hmm.
and you guys offer. They don't have to
Mm-hmm.
think about it in those terms. But when networks grow up and then they actually have to pay big boy bills, um, that's a true reality of what it costs to deliver the media to the, whereas the YouTubers, they don't have to pay nothing, but they also get hardly shit back from YouTube. YouTube gives them, buck, $2 CPM, maybe if they're lucky, or they
Mm-hmm.
share that. So, Google has basically said, I'm taking 90% of the revenue here because I'm hosting the media. I'm taking on the biggest cost. And in reality, they have almost no cost because of their size. So, you know, for Google, that is but also at the same point, someone that's getting 2 million video views doesn't have to pay a dime a listener either,
Yeah. Well,
or
and
viewer.
Google, I mean, let's be frank right now. Google is a great topic here to talk about in relation to podcast distribution. I mean, they could certainly host every podcast that's out there, and it wouldn't be probably even a blip in
Wouldn't
their
even
consumption of their
there wouldn't even
bandwidth.
be a blink.
Yeah,
Yep.
and they are currently doing rehosting of podcasts right now.
Yep.
They it's not a primary distribution; it's a secondary distribution scenario.
Yep.
But they are taking copies of all of our podcasts. If you added your podcast to the Google Play podcast
Mm-hmm.
directory, Google is rehosting your podcast
Yeah.
right now today.
Yep.
So they are distributing. I don't know how big their catalog is, Todd. Is there any sense on how big the Google Play catalog is today?
I haven't looked at it because it continues to not even be a blip on the radar. They've done a horrible job.
Okay, as far as consumption goes,
Yeah. I'm
and
assuming most people have their shows over there.
yeah, so they're storing all these episodes
Yeah.
from many tens of thousands of shows right
Yep.
now, but they're not being primarily hosted over there, so there's not really very much bandwidth being consumed
Yeah.
on their platform at all. It's probably doesn't even register on their charts
A-
anywhere.
Angelo told me
Um,
something the other day. Let's see if I can find. I got to go to Slack here so I get the right number. We have bada bing. Let's see here. I find it. Angela made a comment the other day on. Oh, I know where it's at because I was talking about someone that scraped us, and we're over 400,000 shows in our directory now, and there was okay. So we've been syndicating and basically pulling in the entire podcast directory now for, or we have the entire podcast ecosystem for probably 2 years. Before it was like 60,000 shows. So for 10 years we did 60,000 shows, and now we're doing everything. So we have 23.5 million episodes in our podcast directory. So if you think about that from in the first 10 years was only 40 to 60,000 shows, and then now we're we're basically syndicating them all. We have every show known to man except for the ones that have been asked to be removed, which we do get a few a week. Um, 23.5 million episodes. How many episodes are uploaded to YouTube on a daily basis?
I don't
It's
think it's that many.
no, but there it's we're talking about 12 years worth of stuff here, and YouTube probably gets 23.5 million uploads a month. Let's Google it. How many new videos a day?
I don't know.
Let me. It's gonna shock you. How many new YouTube videos per day? Um, 300 hours of videos are uploaded to YouTube every 5 minutes. Almost 5 billion videos are watched on YouTube every single day. Um,
5 billion?
5 billion
Wow.
videos are watched on YouTube. So, uh, number of videos. Okay, no. Number of unique, but total number of hours. So, they say there's 300 hours uploaded every minute. Every minute. So if we can, this is going to rock your brain here. We're having a little fun here, a little math problem. So if you take 300 per minute times 60 times 24, that gives you 432,000 hours of video that's uploaded every day. Now, let's divide that. What do you think the average podcast length is? 30 minutes?
uh, I'd say probably 50 minutes,
Okay, so
45.
so essentially here, if I've done my math right, let me do this again. And if I divide that by, because we're talking about minutes here,
Hmm.
so 8,640 new videos every day. And multiply that by 30 days. That's 259,000 new videos every day, every month, which,
Hmm.
but the thing is, YouTube videos are only like 10 minutes. So if we do the
Oh,
if
or
we
shorter.
yeah, if we do
Yeah.
the equivalent, the podcasting equivalent then, and I've got 20, so 259 a month, and it's taken me 12 years to get to 23.5 million episodes. Okay. I did think I did the math wrong.
There's a lot less content in podcasting.
Yeah, a lot less. So we're just a blip. We would be just a blip in our video, and our media size is small. Yeah,
Yeah,
they.
and we're just still a blip in the advertising area too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if you look at podcast advertising compared to just mobile search, banner advertising,
Mm-hmm.
search advertising, and video advertising, it's like a $36 billion industry. Just desktop digital video is almost $5 billion industry,
Yeah.
and we're like 100. I think that the projections were $120 million
Right.
last year in advertising revenue.
So if we get to a billion, Rob, you know, buy me a house in Hawaii.
That's
Oh, I'm already here.
that's 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 10 times bigger than where we are today.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I guess we're forecast to hit 20 million next year. So we're growing at about 100 million a year
Oh,
right now.
oh, you mean 200 million next year?
Yeah, yeah, 200 million next year.
Even if we get to
We're currently
if
at
we get to 200 million next year, any show that has an audience of a size 5,000 people per episode or greater will have an advertiser. Every show. Every show that has 5,000 listeners or greater at $200 million will have advertising. They'll have more than one advertiser.
well, currently that's not possible,
That's what I'm saying.
right?
But if there's $200 million if we go from 100 million to 200, I'm telling you, there's there's they want this thing to grow. We don't have enough content to get it there.
Well, I'm not sure that we have the
Volume.
proper technology to make it happen either, right? If we're trying to get advertising into every show that's got, you know, a couple thousand listeners,
Yeah.
I don't know that the technology exists to get that done right now.
Well, that the only way we're getting to 200 million is to do that. The only way. There's no way. There's not enough inventory at $200 million. There will be there if they have to come down. They have to come down into the masses. They have to. I'm telling you. You know, okay,
But it's not so much about it's not well, I mean, it's partially about content, but it's also about audience,
true.
right? It's
Yeah.
audience scale.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Audience scale, if we go to 200 million and the audience scale doesn't, yeah, it's a chicken egg
Doesn't
thing
double.
here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, in order for us to double in ad revenue, we have to double in audience,
Or you
or
feed
CPMs go up.
no, no, or you feed all those shows that don't have advertising. You come into this second tier of shows that are really sitting out there with nothing right now. Thousands,
Yeah,
tens of thousands of shows that have no advertising because the money is being spent in the top tier right now.
yeah.
Unless Gimlet and all these folks ramp up and, have a whole bunch of brand new blockbuster shows, I still don't think they can make enough successful content to get us from 120 to 200 million in a year, if that's what really they think we're going to get to. If that
Well,
was the
something's got to
case,
give in order to make that happen.
if
Yeah.
that was happening, media buyers would be coming to Hawaii and taking me to lunch to get our our podcasters running their advertising. It would flip completely. We wouldn't have to be going there and kissing their asses.
Well, Todd, wouldn't we just need to have a bunch more shows that are doing at a much a larger scale? I mean,
But
so let's say we currently have
oh,
2,000 shows that are at scale, right?
right,
And that's what's generating the vast majority of the
yep, 20 million,
$119 million
yep,
dollars in revenue in
yep, yep.
2016. We just need another, 2,000 top shows, right?
Okay,
That are generating, 200 to 300,000 downloads.
I'm not holding my breath, and I'll take those odds in Vegas any day of the week. There's not enough gimlets, panoplies, and everything else to add 2,000 new shows. Maybe 100, 150, 200 maybe new shows
But
that
is
can
that,
get.
yeah, I mean, but is that the direction the industry is heading? I think it is.
Well, maybe.
Um, because, you know, I mean, until technology exists to monetize shows at smaller scale,
Well, you know what I have.
um, yeah, I do, and I believe that there's other people working on this project,
Right.
but it's also, you know, it, you're also talking about, you know, downward pressure on CPMs too, which is
Uh,
also going to hold that number back.
that it will. It'll they get into, and if CPMs go down and we still make 200 million, it's a bigger problem. It's even bigger. So I
I
don't
mean, if
know. Well,
that number is going to grow based on CPM growth, but what would cause CPMs to grow or to get
CPMs aren't going to.
larger?
They're not. I don't.
What would cause it to go up, though, is my question. I mean, what can we do as an industry to drive CPM levels up? Is it a supply and demand issue? Is it a audience issue? Is it a
Well,
technology issue?
there's already bidding wars for some shows, so that those lucky shows can demand a premium. But again, those are
Hmm.
like 1%er shows.
Yeah.
You know, they, if they're
Is it
sold up.
better? better targeting? Is it better targeting? Is it better understanding of audiences?
I think what it largely is volume. It's purely the volume thing. Because I've
Mm-hmm.
got not incidental, I have proof that smaller audiences engage better than bigger audiences. But the bigger audiences have economy of scale. Again, it's a scale thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's harder. It's definitely harder to have 500 shows on a buy than have 20.
Mm-hmm. You have to have a really great technology to manage that.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
And you have to run herd on podcasters. It's a full-time job just making sure everybody's getting their reporting in and you know,
is there anybody that we can pull on this program that can talk about this topic? Can you think that has any credibility?
as far as the where
And
the
just this topic of scaling and the connection with advertising revenue with scale, and
well, I think
I mean
that
this is
I think
it's
if
a
we
content it's complicated.
it is it is a complicated thing, but when you have well, it has to. This is the way I look at it, Rob. If it's going to grow to 200 million in the next year, there is going to be trickle down. It has to come down into the smaller shows. There'd be no choice. They might be able to spend a portion of that in bigger shows, but they're going to have to find more ways to spend that money because there's just not going to be enough inventory, or there's going to be so many damn ads in a podcast that people are going to get pissed off. There's going to be 5, 6 ads in a single show, so that's the risk too. Then you're just like radio.
Yeah, I mean there's probably like, no coincidence here that this topic is coming up in the same article as Gimlet Media is getting
Mm-hmm.
$15 million in venture,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I guess that leads me to think that the venture capitalists are thinking that pure players like Gimlet or Crooked Media are the keys to reaching 220 million.
Well, I'm sure, because they're content companies. Yeah, probably you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they're
So that
also
means that
they're but they're also
yeah,
overlooking. They're also overlooking the core.
yeah,
They're focused on the strawberry. They're not looking at the cake.
yeah. That's true because it's easier to look at the cherry on top than it is
Yeah,
to look at
and that's the way.
the all the rest of the ice cream that's maybe not as shiny and attractive.
And that's what the media buyers have been focused on. See, in the early days, I mean, we've been through this. There wasn't cherries; it was cake. We
There
were
was a
all. That's
yeah,
the truth.
there's probably peanuts.
Well, no, no, huge amounts of money. Why did I build a system where I could have 400, 500 shows on a single system, on a single ad buy? Because we had 500 shows on a single ad buy. I didn't
Yeah,
build that
you
because
were
I
actually
wanted
doing
to.
it.
We were doing it,
Yeah,
but it was 400 or 500 shows that had audiences. 90% of them were 10,000 listeners or less.
I mean, I think it. This term keeps coming up as I think about this. Is that those 400 shows are likely, I don't know if there's research that proves this, but unduplicated audience, which means that they're
Yeah,
different listeners. It's all, I mean, if you reach 400 podcasts, you're basically
yeah.
reaching the equivalent of one show that has 400 unique listeners.
So, I
Um,
told a
you know,
media buyer one time, and they just looked at me like, I'm like, okay, so, if you buy 10 shows, you're going to get, they do 4 episodes a month, you're getting 40 spots, okay? Across whatever that audience size is, you're getting 40 ad spots. When you buy
probably
100 shows that are doing 4 episodes each, you're getting 400 ad spots to the same size audience as you were those 10 shows, but you're
mhm.
getting a much broader much broader audience
Reach.
reach, and they just look
Yeah.
at you like like you're a fucking idiot. And you're just like, do you not understand? You do this in TV. Why don't you understand this in podcasting?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm buying all the radios. Their mentality is, okay, we'll buy every radio station in Honolulu. We'll do the same ad on every station for every spot for every hour.
Well,
Well,
Todd, that's what's different is that it wouldn't be a different ad on every. I mean, it would be a different ad on every station. Where what we're talking about, what generally what's done with radio is all the same ad.
right, it is the same ad. Yeah, but
It's
it's
easier to implement a campaign across 1,000 radio stations than it is to implement a campaign
well,
across a
I'm
thousand
talking about I'm
podcasts.
talking about talk radio. I'm not talking about some spot that's running on FM 100. So I think that I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited. 200 million into the space. Come on. you know, let's talk.
Start writing checks.
Yeah. Yeah. But we're not seeing the trickle down yet. A little bit here and there. But I'm also not taking $6 CPMs either. You want $6 CPM, go somewhere else.
It's probably not going to Gimlet Media. $6 CPMs.
Maybe.
You think so?
I know public radio's taking a buttload of it.
Well,
The thing is, they can.
public radio is taking that for downloads,
Yeah,
podcast downloads.
absolutely, and they can do that because they have scale.
Yeah, it's a short-term view.
Short term, short, very short, very short-sighted.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know. So, well, I think your buddy out in LA's doing it too.
My buddy out in LA. $2 CPMs down there, Todd.
Our buddy.
Good
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Okay.
I've seen those deals.
$2 CPM.
Hmm.
If I went to a podcaster with a $2 CPM, it would be headline news on. No,
I'd be
no.
throwing you under the bus.
They'd be like, "You're fired. You're fired. Don't ever email me again.
Yeah, that's
Don't
right.
don't don't. You've been I don't know you anymore. You know." And they'd mark my
Yeah, and it's a
email as
50-50
spam.
ad deal, right, Todd? It's
Yeah,
a 50-50 ad deal,
seven.
so
We
you're
do
splitting it
we do
50-50?
70/30.
No.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
we
70-30.
it a buck 42, bud. You know. Come on.
Yeah.
It's insulting. You can get $6 on CP and YouTube's getting $6. They're not giving the YouTubers as much, but they get $6 on YouTube cat videos. Come on.
Yeah.
Cat videos are getting $6
Eh,
CPMs. When was the
well,
last time you clicked on an ad on YouTube?
never. All right. I
I
think
bought Yeah, we're done here. I bought a new toy, a Shure MVI. Whoops.
oh,
Oh yeah.
okay.
So I needed a way to get my Mevo to wire. So what I'm going to do with this will take the XLR input. So
Yeah.
this sounds complicated, but I'm taking my 6 channel Zune H6N whatever the number is, and or H4N or whatever the model is I have, the nice one,
Hmm.
and I run all my wireless mics into it, and then I match the levels, get all that right, and then I come audio out into this box right here. This connects to
Hmm.
my iPad, and then my Mevo video connects to the iPad, and I can do live streaming with 4 people with a very simple setup. This is slick as this little $80 device basically does the interface from my iPhone to the little mini wireless mixer. So
Yeah.
this stuff
So is
is.
that a powered unit? Do you have to plug that into power to get it to work?
You use this on a splitter. because it uses it basically has a special cable. And this actually the first time I've seen one of these. I'm gonna order. Oh shoot! I'm gonna order a couple more because invariably I will lose it. Now I've been taking and putting stuff in plastic bags now because if I don't
Hmm.
and I don't mark them, they end up in some
You lose the cables.
lose cables. So they're making all this noise. So they have a mini jack to Thunderbolt or to the whatever that plug
Oh,
is. The plug for the iPhone. They also make one
that's a
for
Thunderbolt. Yeah.
yeah Thunderbolt. It's basically mini jack to Thunderbolt, and the
Hmm.
phone powers the um, this device. So obviously you got some battery concerns here. So you have to use a splitter in order to be able to keep power going to your to keep charging your iPhone at the same time. So
Hmm.
or your
Yeah.
iPad, so you have some longevity.
Yeah. So you don't drain it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, I've been fighting this for a while, and finally just I went in and looked at their new approved list of devices that work with the iPhone 7 and with the new iPads, and it's on there, and I bought that. So yeah, it's just weird. There was another weird cable that I got too that works with my drone, so I can use my iPad. And this is I hadn't seen one of these before. These were like $4 on Amazon, but it's a mini jack to so
Oh
you,
yeah.
so you can connect another.
Hmm.
So basically, you do it like this. Basically, I can plug that mini jack into my drone controller. Then this goes straight
Oh,
to the
okay.
iPhone. There was no way to get. Actually, what I needed was this cable that the cable that Shure makes. And then we went and need this little dual contraption, but I've never found. If anybody finds this, here's the deal: if any of you find mini jack to Thunderbolt, you find that particular cable in a single piece, please email me. If you
it must exist.
well, it does because Shure makes one. So
Yeah.
I got the little wrapper here that came from Shure, and it's got a barcode on it. I haven't looked for it yet. And if I find this bad boy, I'm gonna order about 10 of these. So it's just stupid. Are we getting insane on our cable stuff?
Oh yeah, I got so many cables. I don't know what to do with them all.
Here.
I got a whole drawer full of
Well,
cables.
let me show you my current ready grab bag. This is the bag I have readily accessible in the audience in the office. That if I need to
For
grab
emergencies. Yes.
that's day to day use.
I've got a drawer right here on my desk here that's just full
Ah.
cables.
And of course, when you're trying to
Yeah.
find one, you can't find one. So what do? You go on Amazon and order three more. It's just, oh man,
Oh
Amazon's
yeah.
like crack. There should be a way that there's going to have to be a buyers anonymous club for Amazon. You know, they make it just too easy to get stuff. They really, really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Well, Amazon's growing to the scale where they're starting to put a lot of physical world retailers out of business.
Uh, Rightly they should
Yeah.
because I can get those little two cables for $6.95 shipped for free. I go downtown and I can't even find them. Although I will
Yeah.
say I was in a Best Buy recently and I did buy. I told you about this for. Let me grab it. They had a deal. Western Digital had 8 terabyte drives on sale at Best Buy for $159, and
8 terabytes.
8 terabytes, 159. So in what I found out about this particular drive was it was Western Digital Reds with 256 megabyte cache. And the particular drive, you can't find that particular drive for like under. like usually it's like 239 or something like that. So what I've ordered is I've ordered a not a NAS, but just a RAID enclosure, which is really cheap and get them for about $100. A 4 drive RAID enclosure that I will put these four. I'm going to take these apart, and I'm going to take the drives out of them, and then I'm going to put the 4 drives in a just a RAID enclosure, and that will be. I'm going to have cold storage here. So I've got active NAS storage with the Synology box with 5 drives, but I'm going to go to a cold storage here in addition to having the regular storage as well. So just trying to solidify my this media. You start you start filling hard drives up, and been doing it for 12 years. That's a lot of data.
So is that a RAID storage that basically you have like 4 drives that are the same size and
Yeah. And
okay,
so I'll have 32 terabytes in the drive, but only 16 terabytes when it's
of actual storage.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the way I'm going to stripe it is that way, so I can lose one drive and still recover, still put a new drive back in, and it will recover it. 2 drives, I'm screwed. But again, it's going to be cold storage from my. I already have a device that is actively up running and where all my media and everything gets stored to. That is I can lose 2 drives on that out of the 5 that's in it. This will just only be turned on once a week to back up the other NAS.
Yeah.
But I couldn't turn it down.
There's
The drive price was so
there
cheap.
is yeah. Oh, that is cheap. Um, there is no way to permanently store anymore. Have you really thought about that? I mean, there's no reliable way to store digital stuff anymore.
Well, if
I
you
mean, everything burns out, Todd.
Amazon Glacier is another good place to put stuff. Um,
Okay, is that in the cloud though? Is that in the
it's
cloud?
in the cloud. So
But you're going to pay a fortune for that.
no, Glacier not.
No?
No, but it's also low access. You're putting it there to store it for the day your house burns to the ground. Th-
Okay. Yeah, I
That's
hadn't heard about that.
yeah. So
That's interesting.
it's relatively low cost. Um, and it is catastrophic the way I call it. Or most companies are like archiving data there, but for me,
Yeah.
Glacier is like for the day the hurricane comes and blows this place, and I have 3 feet of water in my home. That's what Glacier's for. And it's for the entire stack. But I wanted additional cold storage here. Just I just you
Mm-hmm.
get kind of anal, and with all this malware, and what really prompted me, and I know we're going real long here, folks, but this malware is getting so sophisticated at this point that they're starting to use artificial intelligence. There was a session done at Black Hat that talked about building 5,000 variations of a single malware program within a couple of hours so that the antivirus software could not detect it. So when the bad guys start doing this and they start locking our computers up for ransomware, and you have to write a check to get your machine unlocked. This is coming. I'm just telling you. There's going to be something globally that's going to happen. It's going to be catastrophic. You thought the 2000 bug was a big deal. So with this artificial intelligence and using some of the tools that people are coming up with now, they're going to be able to send each individual a unique piece of malware that is going to invade our entire network. So the reason I'm going to cold storage locally is that
Mm-hmm.
if everything's up and running and we're good, and this isn't some time bomb thing, that this RAID will be turned off, not attached to anything, 6 days out of the week, and then one day a week I'll
Mm-hmm.
turn it on and incrementally back it up, and then turn it back off, and I will have locally a cold storage of all my data, all the computer backups, all the stuff to recover. And maybe I'm planning, maybe this will never happen, but if it does, my pants will not be around my ankles.
you can you can throw the finger to the hacker, huh?
Well, it's still going to be painful, but at least my
Yeah.
data will be able to be recovered.
Hmm.
You know, it's something. I'm just. And after hearing this black hat thing, I was like, oh my god. You know, and all it takes is
Hmm.
someone to really put something. And Macs are not safe either. There was been some malware variants running on Macs for years that owners never knew about. So
Hmm.
calling home to mama every
Oh yeah.
keystroke.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I'm putting cold storage in here. And you don't have to have a RAID. You can just get one big drive and back everything up. But I wanted to be able to be assured that if a drive goes bad, I'll be able to recover. So just as long as you have one
Hmm.
one big drive that everything's backed up to that you don't have plugged in 24/7, you're relatively safe. But the drive will fail at some point. So maybe two drives.
Yeah.
In the old
Yep.
days, I used to go to the safety deposit box once a month and swap out a hard drive. But my storage got to the point where I can't put a hard drive in a safety deposit box anymore. I don't have enough room to store it all. So,
Yeah.
anyway, all right.
Yeah.
Sorry I've got on this tangent here. Everyone, Rob, how they reach you?
Probably the best way, email rob at Spreaker.com or rob at robgreenlee.com. Either of those email addresses. I'm on Twitter at Rob Greenlee with two E's. That's probably the best way.
I'm Todd at blueberry.com or at Geek News. Um, that you can reach me on Twitter. But hope you enjoyed today's show. We kind of we didn't know what we were talking about before we started today. We freelanced this. How'd we do? We do okay? Freewheeling? But we're
I
planning
think we
on,
did okay, Todd.
yeah.
Yeah.
Kathy's still, when is she going to come? Is it after Podcast Movement or?
I'm not sure at this point.
Okay.
So
I know
so we'll have
she's
to. Her schedule has been a little crazy.
been
Yeah.
busy, yeah. So we were going
Yeah.
to have Kathy Doyle on, but she had a bunch of stuff. It's summer. Everyone's busy. But next weekend will be our last show before we go to Anaheim.
Yeah.
I
That's true.
I got to start writing. Basically I got to complete my presentation. I'm been a little bit behind, so that's on my agenda today.
Yeah, I have a lot of prep, a lot more prep I
Whoa,
need to do.
that thing that
Yeah, you've got the new media show
yeah
on top of your face.
the bug moved around. I don't want to have to send this control surface in to fix that. But okay, everyone, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the new media show. Everyone, take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.